Welcome. I'm Shoshanna Richek, your functional nutrition and lifestyle counselor. And I'm here with my trusted friend and medical advisor, Kara Strazza, who is a licensed naturopath practitioner. She's also got her doctorate in psychology. And I just wanted to share her with you because I find her background fascinating and her ability to work with people in a plant medicine environment that she knows about, that she's going to tell you about, because that's not my strength. And I just wanted to share her with you. So, Kara, welcome.
Thank you.
Will you tell our friends here? I want to know a little bit about your background. I find it really fascinating. You weren't just born here in the United States and decided to get a degree in plant medicine.
True. Facts.
Tell everybody where you
I
came
was
from.
born in the United States, though.
You were, okay.
I have dual citizenship, so yeah.
Okay.
So I am half indigenous, which is Native American, and I am half Italian. And on my mother's side, we are Native. And I've spent a lot of time with my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and with the healer within our reservation, and just really embracing the whole concept that we don't waste the gifts that the Creator gives us and that we are part of creation. So everything that exists in the world is meant for us to be part of this evolving ecosystem. And I talk a lot about that. I had a patient the other day ask me why there's so many eights involved in my practice. And so I wrote a blog about it. If you'd like to read the symbolism, it's the circle of life is ever evolving.
And we'll share your website more than once, but for those of you, since she said her blog, her website is mynatpath.com. So mynatpath.com.
Thank you.
Onward.
Yes. And so then the other half of my, I guess, woven fabric is with my great-grandmother. My family's from Abruzzo, Italy, Abruzzo and Alta. And so where I spent a lot of time with my family there. Up until I was 10, I split my time between both. And then when I was 10 years old is whenever we planted some roots in the real world.
So when you were between the reservation and Italy, what was your exposure to health care? If you didn't feel well, how did you learn to be fascinated by the plant world?
So I actually didn't even know that I was for a while. So on the Italian side, we were strict Roman Catholic. And so I was raised with everything of God's creation and honoring that. And then on the Native side, of course, we have our Creator. And so when my great-grandmother was in the kitchen, us kids had to be in the kitchen. There was not an option for us to not learn what she was doing. But also, I didn't even realize that it was strange or odd to others until I was here and I had gotten sick and my grandmother made a batch of one of our concoctions and she put it on my chest with newspaper, and all of my family members watching are laughing because they know how much we got made fun of for it. But darn if we weren't better the next day. And so we didn't realize that she was using eucalyptus and things like that, but it worked. And so at that point, I really didn't know any differently. And something that people are super interested to find out is my entire family, for the majority of my life, my mother and my father worked in the traditional healthcare. They worked in hospitals for most my entire life. And so I definitely have that exposure as well. My brother, he's retired now, but he was an infantry medic with the military. He worked at Walter Reed. So I went for the brain side of it with developmental psychology. I wasn't getting into the blood and guts of it all. But I have a ton of exposure to traditional medicine as well.
That's exciting. And tell us, how do you become a licensed naturopath practitioner here in the United States?
Yeah, so I want to be very clear that the naturopath side, it does go hand in hand with the herbal medicine side, but they are two separate things. And that's not to be confused with, a lot of people see like a functional medicine doctor. That is an entirely different thing. And naturopath kind of holistic health is not a recognized by the medical board, traditional type of medical practice.
Not yet.
Not yet. However, we do have our own licensing board. We have to take our exams just like everyone else. And so I did the naturopathic practitioner coursework, which covers more of the human body. So biology, anatomy and physiology, that type of stuff. But then on the flip side of that is my advanced master herbalist. And with that side of things is botany, biochemistry, that type of thing. And so those two worlds come together for me. And it really, I guess my interest started because it was what I already knew. It was just innate to who I am. And even with parents and family members in traditional medicine, they still opted for the natural path first. And
Right.
so here I am.
That's cool. So I know I'll put myself out there. When I came in, I was feeling imbalanced, and you had a particular protocol for me. You wanted me to detox my body, including of parasites, which I had never heard of doing here. I know a lot of people have done it, but I thought it was a fad or something. So explain why that's so important.
Well, for me, a lot of times whenever you're talking about holistic health care and things like that, you hear about people talking about getting to the root cause, which, to be clear, I completely agree with. We absolutely
As
need to
do
find the
I.
root
Yeah.
cause, right? But for me, my ultimate goal is for everyone to find their own homeostasis. And I truly believe that your body is capable of doing that. Using the things that are available to us on Earth to make that happen is what I aim to do. However, every human being is different. And so for me, designing a protocol that is specific to the life cycle and the life phase that somebody is in, what symptoms they're having. As you know, I made you send me labels of every single supplement that you were taking so I can figure that out. Being able to do laboratory testing and get different panels done on people. So it's not anti-science. It's just
Yeah.
using that and then combining it with a natural kind of protocol that is non-invasive. And that's probably something else that is a big difference for me, is all of the treatments that we do are completely non-invasive. And all of the lab work that you do, all the specimens get mailed to your home and you do them there and mail them back. So you don't have to worry about, that exposure out there in the world. And so once I look at all the blood work you sent me, all the samples you're taking, our exhaustive intake where I asked you a million questions, and then also doing the ionic detox and seeing what colors and what sentiments and things like that came out, it gives me a bigger picture of what you have going on, as well as just a regular physical exam of what color is someone's tongue, what color are their eyes, how is their posture, their gait, all of these things that just matter. Most
Is
people
that why you sent me to the kitchen on my first appointment for something? You wanted to see how I walk?
How you walk is important. And my office is in between a massage therapist and a chiropractor for that reason. Your spine health is so important and your bone marrow health is so important to what's going on with the rest of your body that if you do need a reference to what's going on with your bone structure, I have someone next door. So yeah, it's pretty
Awesome.
great.
Yeah, I do love how we're both into finding ways without pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that. It doesn't mean never, but it's let's try other things first if there's not a critical situation.
Mhm.
What are some of the common reasons why somebody would choose to come to you versus going to a doctor? Or maybe even like I still have my doctor here, my primary care, but they're not educated
Mhm.
in nutrition.
Ever.
They're not educated in plant medicine. They're not educated in all of these ways to heal outside of pharmaceuticals and some lifestyle, right? I rely on you. You now have my latest blood work.
You know?
And I had a couple things to look at. And I'm doing a gluten-free thing because I think that could be part of it. And it's all based on science, like you said. But what are some other specific reasons without me divulging my medical history?
I think that really people looking to find balance are typically the ones who want to come see me the most. I'm certainly not for everyone. And again, I'm not against Western medicine at all. I'm very against our food system being poisonous to the point that we need pharmaceuticals. I don't love that.
Can I ask you to expand on that when you moved back into the United
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, after you had a child.
Oh, both of those scenarios. So when I first started going to a traditional school here, and we would receive the school lunch and a school breakfast, my brother and I both started getting really sick. And we weren't really sure why. We were pretty much healthy kids. And my great grandmother and my grandmother on my mother's side, my grandparents lived next door to each other. So it was kind of great for us. They started making our breakfast, and our after school snack was homemade pizza. And she would pack our lunches for us, and we weren't getting sick anymore. And she truly had a garden in the back. And everybody knows that Italians love to make their own wine, but made our own cheese, seasoned our own sausage and meat, and pulled the herbs to season those meats. And some of our more traditional foods, they were just very clean. So even just making pasta, I have pictures of us at that kitchen table, that aluminum kitchen table, with a pile of ground flour to make our own pasta. But with my son, that was the pivotal moment where I shifted my career. I was in the corporate world, I was a global vice president. I traveled the world, which afforded me to get a lot of education because I would just extend my trips. But my son ended up in the hospital. And shout out to MUSC, Sean Jenkins. They were fantastic with him. Again, not bashing it by any means, but my son had a tremendous reaction. It looked anaphylactic. His eyes were almost swollen shut. His mouth was swollen. We were at Sean Jenkins for 9 days. We saw every specialist there. They brought residents in to show my son as a sample because they could not figure out what was happening with him. And as it turned out, he was having an autoimmune response to an additive that was not even clearly labeled on any of the things that he had eaten. But he went to preschool and they had snack. And it wasn't a known allergen for him. And he ended up, because he had to rebuild his immune system, he missed his entire first month of school that year. So it was pretty intense. And that combined with whenever I was working in group homes, that's what sparked it for me. My background in psychology, I was a behavior therapist, and I became a program manager for group homes. So I'm the person that oversees all of the operations for the group homes with the kids who were orphaned or wards of the state, a lot of them with special needs. And when I became the program manager, I also became responsible for reviewing their DEA logs, which is where you log all of the medications that these children are taking. I became responsible for approving the grocery shopping list.
Wow.
And seeing that a 9-year-old child was being given a sleep aid almost made my head explode for obvious reasons. And then on top of that, almost every meal was microwavable. And just implementing a couple of changes. Why are we not giving these kids chamomile tea before bed? Why are we giving them the sleep aid? Things like that. Or I started with a smaller change of just at least dinner has to be cooked. There's a full kitchen in each of these group homes. Microwaving meals for these kids is not going to work for 3 meals a day. So at least dinner has to be home cooked. And it was nice because I made it like our Italian family dinners used to be. Something like that with the kids in the group home. And seeing that on average, out of these 5 different group homes, on average, these children's medications were reduced by 2 on average.
Wow.
Just by adjusting their diet and helping them sleep naturally, letting their body produce its own melatonin to help relax them.
Seriously.
That was a pivotal moment for me, that while I was in the corporate world and doing corporate compliance and that kind of stuff, and I went to these other countries, I just spent more time learning about their food as medicine and what they believe to be true with Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine and things like that. The sun gives you nutrients, believe it or not. And so things like that just sparked it for me. But once my little guy ended up in the hospital, and they couldn't tell me what was causing it. And the first hospital we went to, before Sean Jenkins, they basically just treated it as a standard allergic reaction, and they gave him pharmaceuticals that slowed his heart. I obviously did not love that. And then when he went to Sean Jenkins, luckily they were able to catch that. And while we were there, they had every specialist coming in, and no one could tell me exactly what was wrong with my child or exactly how to fix it. And that's whenever Mama got to research it, and I had to figure it out. What changed? What was different? Why did this happen? Because I certainly, when it's your baby,
Absolutely.
it changes things. And so that happened to be right around as soon as that was done. Once he was out of the hospital and kind of back to school, he went back to school in October. And then that following March is when COVID happened. And so many people were looking for the pharmaceutical solution, or they were just panicked because they didn't know what to do. They had gotten a flu shot when they were younger and it almost killed them. And so they're like, what do I do during a pandemic? And so at that point, I was doing more consultation and just trying to help people. And it wasn't until this past year that I established a brick and mortar location.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Wow. You've definitely lived through, and even on the corporate side, you've seen all of this with children, and then you saw it with your own son in a crazy, scary way.
Yep.
What are some, like you said, when people feel unbalanced, how does somebody know if they're unbalanced?
I would say some of the most common is with women especially, but also with men. Whenever you feel like your hormones are out of whack, you're more emotional. With men, they don't have as much vitality and that type of thing. As women, we're pretty in tune with how our hormones change us and make us feel. So if you feel some of those extremes, I would say hormonal is probably one of the biggest ones for my current base, because even teenagers who get really bad acne, I'm treating a couple right now who they feel insecure because of their acne, and we know that it's hormonal and it's what's happening because of their age, unfortunately.
Right.
But we can help that, and we can help it naturally, and these kids don't have to suffer with that. Another way, it's a little ick, is bowel movements. If you're not having a regular bowel movement, and again, there's one of these things, it seems like bowel movements and sleep. With men, they're like, my head hits the pillow, I'm out, I'm good. With women, it's like I wake up, I go back down, I don't sleep, I'm thinking about why penguins have knees in the middle of the night, all of that. But then also with the bowel movements, there's men that are like, same time, every day, twice a day, good to go. But then with women, they're like, I'm lucky if I go once a week. And so that's not balanced.
Okay.
It's understanding your own body. And when you feel like you're holding on to extra weight, when you feel like you're not regular cadence at some point throughout your body. So if you feel like your emotions are not a regular cadence, if you feel like your bowel movements are not a regular cadence, anything that feels off for you is probably it.
Explain cholesterol and hormones, and especially as people age. Women, I don't know if the same is true for men, but talk about hormones for a minute. Cholesterol, which is hormone.
Yeah. It's all tied together, actually. And something that's very interesting, and again, this is not me giving medical advice.
We're just your friends here. Let's just get that out of the way.
Yes.
This is not medical advice. We're just sharing what some of
telling you where to look.
Observations.
Just telling you where to look.
Yeah.
But if you actually look at what is considered a healthy standard for cholesterol by our standard United States panels right now, compared to what the standard used to be, if you start from around like post-depression area, what those levels were then compared to what they are now, what is considered a healthy level, but then also what our standard is compared.
But let's explain that. The acceptable levels of cholesterol used to be higher.
Much higher.
And they've lowered them, I think, because of the pharmaceutical situation. That's just what I think. What do you think?
I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think if you go back and look at the research of when some of these standards changed, or even comparing them to what is considered traditionally acceptable in other countries that are similar to ours. So I'm not talking about third world countries and places like that, who do use a lot of holistic healthcare, by the way.
They use a lot of what?
Holistic healthcare.
Holistic, yeah.
Yeah, they don't have traditional pharmaceuticals, right?
Yeah.
But the threshold also has a cross-section of what your genetic makeup is. And so it makes me really happy to hear when people are getting some genetic testing done, Because for me, as an example, half of my DNA is Mediterranean. And it sounds strange to think about, but if you go all the way back since the dawn of time, right, there were cavemen who lived in caves. But if you were to go to Africa, for example, they were not living in caves, they were living in sunshine, right? And so if you think about the amount of vitamin D and things that were being absorbed all the way back in that lineage versus the cavemen who were in dark, wet caves and eating things like mushrooms, and there was a lot of moisture and the weather was colder and they needed more of that fat. Your genetic makeup has a huge component to that. So to have a standard number for every human in existence across the United States seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
But there's a huge push because a lot of times people will talk about your thyroid,
Yeah.
right? And not to say your thyroid's not important. It is. However, your thyroid, and again, this is not medical advice, but your thyroid, it really only makes up maybe 20% of your hormone production in your entire body. And so when we're talking about all of these levels being up and down, and if there's an autoimmune indicator and that type of thing, we really have to go all the way to your glands in your brain. And that connects more parts of your body than your thyroid. Your thyroid is a part of that.
Okay, I want to back up for 1 second because what I really wanted to get to was the changes in cholesterol, say, as women age.
Yep. Yeah.
Explain that.
Your cholesterol, as you age, especially as women age, you have so many things that are changing in your body. But something that is a misconception is that because you are menopausal or postmenopausal, you don't still have a hormonal cycle, and you do. And so you may be more sedentary. You may be slower moving. You may have different things going on with your bones and your bone mass. And your bone marrow is directly connected to all of these things that we're talking about. And so while your cholesterol level may appear to be high or higher than what it was, your chemical makeup is much different. And so it's not to say that if you have high cholesterol that you should sit down with a bag of chips and a bowl of queso and be like, let's see what happens, I'll be fine. Not by any means, but there are things that you can be thinking about and looking at it at a more widespread level. So whenever you send me your blood work or you send me a screenshot of a piece of it, I'm like, okay, but I need to see these other 4 things that go along with it to understand how all the pieces are going together.
And so isn't there a connection, though, with women's reduction in estrogen and typical escalation in cholesterol?
There is, but that again comes back to, what you're producing in your body, how active you are. Diet obviously is a huge part of that. But one of the things which I'm going to give a plug here to show with what you do with the emotional eating component has an enormous part of that. Your cortisol levels in your body and your body's ability to metabolize that directly affects your heart health, your cholesterol, the strength of your arteries and the artery walls.
Yeah.
There's so many pieces that just come together that have to do with weight gain and what those cholesterol levels are like.
Sure.
There's so many things, but with your estrogen going down, you do have a lot of other hormones that are trying to balance out in your system. You don't need as much estrogen anymore. And a lot of people will then start doing a hormone replacement, or they'll say, well, it's bioidentical. Again, now you're on a cholesterol medication and you're on a hormone replacement, right? And so essentially your levels in your body are purely based on the pharmaceuticals that you're taking and not necessarily what's actually happening in your body with your natural level.
We've talked a little bit about genetics, and I just want to share that something I'm pretty passionate about is the whole study of epigenetics. Just because somebody's genetic makeup, their lineage, and they come from something doesn't mean that they can't change it with their lifestyle and their nutrition, and not necessarily, and I'll use the word sentenced to the same, because a lot of people that I talk to say, oh, my mother had this and my father had that and my grandmother and this and that. My dad was one of 8 kids, the only one of 8 that never had cancer. Until he was 95, he developed some skin cancer on his head.
Yeah.
So I followed him. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to get it either, but I did, as a matter of fact. And I got it because a doctor gave me a pill for my bone health. And 6 months later, and they did blood testing. It wasn't genetic, it was environmental. And the environmental change was a different medication in my body. And that's why pharmaceuticals are my last step.
And cancers feed off of hormones and fake hormones and that type of thing. And again, not medical advice, but there are a ton of plants that exist in the world that have been scientifically proven and then shelved to reduce cancer, reduce the effects of chemotherapy, the negative effects on your body to get that toxicity out. There's so many pieces that go to that. But unfortunately, anytime you're taking a pharmaceutical, you are changing the chemistry of your body. But even with what you're talking about, where somebody says, in my history, we're all big boned or whatever it may be. Yes, agreed. But that doesn't mean that there's not a why behind that, right? If your family tradition of making a certain dish, they use a pound of lard in it, it tastes delicious. And I'm not telling you that you shouldn't eat that, but what I'm saying is you shouldn't eat the whole pound. That's something
That
you can
could be a reason for cholesterol too.
It might just have something to do with it. And you're talking to the girl that loves pasta and cheese, and I will sit there and eat an entire bowl by myself. But there are these genetic components, and there are certain things that you need to be aware of. But the psychologist side of me also firmly believes that everything that you say, your brain hears you, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's very easy to convince yourself of one thing or the other. And so that's where our two worlds combine so much is there are herbal remedies that we can use to help your body get back into balance. There are food and natural things that you can do to detoxify your body. Again, if you want to look at the most recent study of since people started using sunscreen to block out the sun's rays, how much more incidences of cancer and things like that exist. It's really just a matter of what your body needs and what your genetic makeup leads you to.
One of the things, and I won't divulge any names for privacy reasons, but one of the things that I love about working with Kara is she's definitely helped me a lot. And I've been able to refer her to family and friends that do not live in South Carolina.
Yep.
So she's capable of reading people's information, putting together her concoctions, whether it's for detox or something else, and sending them. And I'm really grateful for that because I think
I get the pictures from Whole Foods. Yeah, when they're there, and I'm like, pick some of this up, mix it with this, and yeah.
it's nice to have an advisor, a health advisor that understands natural herbal ways to heal yourself and stay healthy and balanced. And then as a second step, it's like today I was at the chiropractor. I had a little pain in my knee. And I said, what do you think about this pain in my knee? She said, oh, I want you to check out this video on YouTube. It's called Knee Over Toe Guy. And it's all these exercises of getting your knee over your toe to do this, that, and the other thing. And it's great because I don't really want to go to another doctor. I don't want to get an MRI. I'm not right now.
Right.
It's a tiny little pain, but I'm so aware of everything.
Yeah.
And the same thing with you and with me. We all have these little changes, little by little, to help people improve their quality of life and feel better. And it's not to say don't go to your doctor. I still have one, the other kind, but to have somebody in this field who can help you in a different way.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest things is that's not for everyone.
Yeah.
There has to be a trust-based relationship there. And I feel like people who have questions and we have that conversation, I either have the skeptics who need convincing, but I'm not going to press one over the other. I understand that not everyone can trust this process. And some people firmly believe that traditional pharmaceuticals should be your first step or that type of thing. If we look at everything that's going on in the world today with the RFK hearings and things that were called out there, there's definitely two sides to everything.
I wanted to jump in for real quick. You said the word block twice, and now I remember what I was going to say. The thing that's scary to me about pharmaceuticals is the minute you take them, they're blocking something else from happening. So they're making something happen while they're stopping something else. And maybe that something else is good for a bunch of other things. That's why, again, my first stop is a naturopath. And I've found great results with Kara, and she's really easy to get a hold of too, at least for now. I've been lucky. Maybe this video will push her over the edge, but she knows enough to manage her time. But it's just really great. She uses an app, and I can just message her if I have a question or I'm concerned about something. She gets right back to me. I just love all that about working with you. I think it's easy. And also regular texting and phone calls.
Check in.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that is probably important to point out as well is I do have a registered nurse on my team. So if there is something with traditional medicine, or if there's something where I'm looking at something and I need another perspective, or if somebody wants to ask a traditional medical question against whatever we're talking about, I do have someone that is a resource there. Worked in the medical professional, traditional medicine in the hospitals for over 30 years. She's happily retired with loving on her grandbabies and all, but all of the blood work that I receive, I put my thoughts together and she can go into the chart and she takes a look to see if there's anything that I missed. But then also if there's any kind of interactions that I'm maybe not thinking about between pharmaceutical medication somebody's already on, lasting effects. One of my patients is 78 years old. She is wonderful and I love her, but she had long COVID in the longest form of long COVID I've ever seen. And whenever you're that age, it's difficult. And some of the protocols that she went through with traditional medicine, I went to the RN on my team and consulted with a PA that I have access to as well to understand in a hospital setting, what does that protocol look like? What were the steps that led to these treatments that she received? Because that can soak into your bones, right? When you're taking these pharmaceuticals, it can change the chemistry of your body for a longer period of time. And I actually combined an immunity boosting protocol with a detoxification protocol for her so that she could be drawing out some of those long COVID symptoms, but also maintaining that immunity because of her age and because of some of the things that she had already been through.
And how long has she been seeing you?
She's been seeing me for about 8 or 9 months now, and she referred her daughter to me. And
She's feeling better?
I'm pretty sure she's totally better. She's full of life and rocking out life. Yeah.
So in closing, I want to thank all of our visitors for watching this. Anyway, I want to thank you so much, Kara, for joining me today. You're my first guest. And I want to thank our viewers for showing up and watching this. And if you have any questions for Kara Strazza, mynatpath.com. That's her website.
I'm also on Instagram at mynatpath.
Yeah. Is there a dash or a hyphen?
There's a hyphen in the website, so it's my-nat-path.com. But on Instagram, on Facebook, it's just mynatpath, naturopath health.
Okay, cool. I'll when we put this video together, I'll just type the line in there so people can see it.
For sure. And if you do message me on Instagram or on Facebook, I will refer you to our private line that we can text a message through there because I don't want you putting your personal health information on social media. So.
Perfect. Anything else closing that you'd like to say?
Thank you for having me. And if you've not had the pleasure of having an intake with Joe, I definitely recommend it for sure.
Thank you.
I love everything about your vibe. You know that. And also, if you are interested in learning more, if you just mentioned this video, let me know that you saw us here. I will waive the consultation fee for anyone who mentions this video.
Awesome.